No, it's yours. Scott, a moment ago was feeling myself.
I know, I was waving everybody in.
You join us, and that's fun. And you're not going to run out of snacks. Something she needs to program down.
I am
That's retrospect. As soon as Chad has
Ooh, nice little TV we got going on there.
So I'll call to order the meeting of, the work session for our city council meeting on today, Wednesday, February 12th. First item for the workshop is budget process with Ms. Steph. Or sorry. I've got these up in the wrong order. Solid waste, still with Denise and Brian. So we'll turn it over to Denise.
Great, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, council. The time difference is so weird. So we're going to quickly go over the presentation, going over the actual blue line changes that were provided to you on Title V and Title IX regarding the solid waste collection issues that we've talked about for several months. But we're also going to, at the end, where I've got a slide that says questions, we'll give all the council time to discuss some of the questions that were opened up earlier this week, and I provided responses to this afternoon or morning. So let's start first by going to the next slide. So the purpose of the change of why this is coming to you right now. We've talked about it for quite a while, about the delinquency with the solid waste accounts, especially in the areas that we do not provide anything outside of solid waste collection, stormwater, and streetlights, that we didn't have an instrument that would adequately allow us to discontinue service in those areas in order to bring those accounts more current. So the purpose of the change was, first of all, to bring that consistency to the code between Title V and IX with reference to the solid waste utility. So you'll see throughout the whole thing, through both these titles, things changed that were the same. So like garbage container went from garbage container to solid waste container to. So we just made it really consistent and called it solid waste container, because we do provide 3 containers. We provide the green waste, recycling, and so we just call them solid waste. The next thing we did was we wanted to provide clear and consistent definitions, what we just talked about. And we wanted to provide guidance and authority to discontinue a service for solid waste collection and or remove the city-owned containers as a result of non-payment or a lack of contract for services. Now let me clarify on the lack of contract for services first of all. We would not just discontinue service because we do not have a contract in place. That area, when it was annexed in, we just went ahead and kept the Salt Lake County containers and have replaced them as needed when we took over for the county. But in doing so, that didn't give anyone the opportunity to come in and fill out a contract for service like new homeowners that move into our cities do. So in doing so, those people that are annexed in, almost all, unless they've had some sort of request for service outside of what they originally had, don't have a contract. We would not turn them off for just that. However, we would ask that they come in and we would provide several opportunities through their bill or through an electronic method for them to get a contract in place. But we would not discontinue service just because of a lack of contract. Now, why a contract would be really important for the city is when someone moves and they owe on their garbage account, if we don't have a contract in place, we have no way of taking them to a collection agency or court and enforcing it. the court would look at us and just say, you didn't have a contract, they didn't ask for the services, you have nothing that says they wanted the services, and now you want them to pay something that they didn't ask for. So that's pretty much where that stands. We'll go to the next slide. We'll go through Title V changes first. You can see that the changes in blue were all referenced from container or garbage container to solid waste container. It connects Title V to Title IX with regard to billing, payment, and the consequence of non-payment, so that those titles are clearly connected, which is really important. They were not connected in the past with regard to solid waste collection. It defines what a solid waste container is, and it adds reference to non-payment of service fee. So that fee that is referenced when they become delinquent, which we'll talk about the delinquent period as well at the end of this presentation. Our Title IX changes do the same thing. It clears up all those references from container or garbage container to solid waste container. But it also provides the CAO the authority to discontinue services, or the CAO's delegate, which would likely be the treasurer or our utility billing staff or myself. So it provides that authority, which we haven't had in the past. And it provides contract language, which allows the city to enter the property and retrieve those solid waste containers. Right now, that language has not been included in the contract, and this is new for the city, but it does provide the protection that the city would need. Again, not something that we're going to go out and ask everybody to re-sign a contract. However, we will probably do a strong engagement campaign where we would say, hey, we have a new contract, please sign, please review your services, do you have the adequate amount of services, those kinds of things. And then it provides guidance on how partial payments are applied. So this is critical because in order for us to receive payment, and we receive it for multiple utilities, we need to know how that payment is going to be applied. So if someone owes $150 on a bill and they provided a $25 payment, what we do first is we apply it to that interest and penalties that are on the account first, because those are things that are most difficult for us to collect later, and it doesn't go towards their service level. And then following that, we go to the street lights so that we are able to collect on those, because again, you can't turn off the street light just in that area. It goes to the stormwater fee, and then it starts being applied to the other services that we have the ability to remove service for. So sewers next, then solid waste, and then water. So if they do that $25 payment, it's going to go straight towards the utilities that we do not have as much control over, and finally be applied to the utilities that we have a little more control over, access to. And then Title IX also amends the section from disconnection to discontinuance of utilities. So they're really not disconnecting anymore. This is really about just water services, disconnecting water service. Now we're saying that we're just going to discontinue the utilities to that home, whether it be we pick up the cans, we just use our contractor and no longer pick up a can, dump a can, or if we actually shut water off. So all of those are covered under that change in language. It outlines the process of the discontinuance of utilities, and then it includes the requirement for a contract of service. But again, that's going to be a long-term goal for us. While it would be required in the code, it would not be something that we enforce in 90 days or anything. It provides consequences for the use of another account holder's containers. So this happens a lot. So if we have a delinquent account and we shut service off, so we tell aides don't pick up at that location, they'll put their containers in front of another home so that they're picked up there, or they'll begin putting their garbage in another homeowner's container. And so there's consequences for that, and we warn them, and then there's some legal consequences to it as well. So do we have any questions about what the blue line items are on these code changes, or any comments that we'd like to have written on?
Yeah, this is Kelvin. I've got a couple of comments.
Sure.
The one is on the use of, the one is in that particular section that talks about the 9288 subsection C, that talks about using someone else's container or not doing that without permission, and
Right.
it's a criminal offense. I'm not sure I want to go down that road. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but you know, if I have my garbage cans out in front of my house, and the neighbor hasn't paid his fees, and they come and dump it in my garbage, and I'm charged with a criminal offense, I'm not going to be very happy with that. That's my neighbor, you know, doing something at 2 o'clock in the morning, throwing stuff in my garbage can. Yet it sounds like I could be charged with the offense, and I'm not a fan of that one. The other question that I would have, and maybe the city attorney can jump in on that one, but if we're going after garbage cans, and yes, we own them, but if we go after garbage cans and they're on that person's private property, and we're the government, does that start to implicate Fourth Amendment issues there, going on property and seizing our property?
So let me talk about the first issue, and then I'm sure that Rob can talk about the second, or Jared. I don't know if Jared's there. So the first one is that being charged with a criminal offense, that may be, this is the language in there, may be charged with a criminal offense, but the offense and the charge is actually against the person that does it unlawfully, not the account owner. So it would be your neighbor who's starting to use your can and without your permission.
I think we need to make sure
And
that
then
that's
they would
very
be
clear.
charged with a criminal offense.
It says and does so without permission from the account holder.
Yeah.
So is Jared or Rob, do they want to go talk getting on people's property and removing city-owned property?
Well, before he talks about that, I'm also uncomfortable with that, and not just for the legal issues. I just don't think it's safe to send our staff on, especially, hopefully most people store their garbage cans in their backyard. And I just don't think it's wise to send our staff to a disgruntled resident's home and ask them to go to the backyard to pick up solid waste containers. I think that we could pick them up when they're out on the street. We know we should know the numbers that are assigned to that house. And I would be in favor of that, but I'm very uncomfortable, both for the reasons Kelvin states and for the safety of staff going onto people's property.
So can I speak to that, Denise?
Sure.
When we get the work order to go remove a can, we do it on their garbage day when it's out on the road. We don't let staff access private property.
But in this new code, it says you can, and I don't want to vote for that.
Yeah.
Let me explain why that was put in there. Rob and I had talked about this, and a lot of times we don't have any ability to go on someone's private property without, one, a contract in place, and that would be within the contract that they signed. But second of all, if they've got the garbage can, one of our garbage cans that they're not paying on, but that it's in their driveway or if it's on the side of their house, there's really no way without this contract saying that we can go onto your property to obtain the garbage can and take it off. Unless they put it on the street, there's really no other way that we have permission to go onto their property to get the property of the city's property without their permission. And so by them signing the contract, they would be agreeing to allow us to come onto their property and just obtain our garbage.
Right, but I don't want to allow you to do that.
Okay.
I don't want to allow it for the reasons I stated.
It sidesteps arguments about, well, the can was on my park strip or on my side of the sidewalk versus the street. You don't have those arguments when this contract is written the way
It's
it is.
a simple picture though,
So-
snapped at the time picking up the can, right? If it's on the street, our guy or girl can take it, snap a picture, show that it's on the street, and that's where they picked it up. I think that would hold up in court, yes.
Yeah, it did. It's just,
And for me, it's getting paid for the service. The can, yes, I don't know how much they are, but, and I'm pretty frugal, but even if it's $200, I'd rather that can stay in their backyard and our employee be safe, and our employee go in their backyard.
I think the issue though is that you let them keep the can, they'll still keep putting it out.
But we can go on
Yeah, but when they
garbage
put it
day
out,
and we take
that's
the
when you
can.
grab it.
That's when we take the can, is when it's put out to the curb.
We're gonna have a whole new reality series, West Jordan garbage can repossessions. And that's how we pay the money for these bills.
There you go.
Hey,
It's
so,
like Reno 911.
this is Kelvin again. Hey, in 92A2, C, the new one, where it says the chief administrative officer may discontinue. In the paragraph, and I know I'm getting into the weeds with some words, but in paragraph B above, it talks about chief administrative officer or designee. I'm wondering if C shouldn't also have that language, otherwise it forces Corbin to be the person who can discontinue the utility services. But if it's a designee, then he can do what, then we can do what we want to what level. So I would be more comfortable using the same language from B to C there to help make it streamline with administration staff.
I think that's wise. Thank you for that recommendation. That's good. That's why we do these in work sessions, because it feels like we are able to discuss and make some more consistent changes.
So just really quick, to go back to the line about being able to enter their property, one of the things that was coming to my mind was, well, what if this is in somebody's garage? I want to be very, very clear that, yeah, reaching over the sidewalk's one thing in my mind, but if it's in a garage, I really don't want to give access for that or anything that indicates that it is all possible. I'd like to see wording that just says they may be collected and just leave it at that. From the comments that were made, how do I word this? How many would like to see it, just a straw poll, how many of the council would like to see a change made to that section about entering property? Seems like a majority
Was the
there.
council willing or wanting to change the language to remove the criminal offense language, or are you wanting to leave that in there?
The criminal offense, let's talk about that next, but the entering the property, I just want to, removing the section that says we can enter their property, to remove it, first of all, that was the one that looks like a majority supports changing. Is that fair?
Could we maybe go page by page on what we have? Instead of skipping around, is that okay?
Yeah, well, we'd started there.
I know.
So which page would you like to go to then?
Well, just if we start at the beginning and go through it, I think.
Sure. So, want to start at page 1?
Well, I don't have 1, I don't have 2, but when we get to page 3, which is 553E, I would like that language changed. Instead of giving a time for it to be there, I think we need to provide a little more leniency. And the question I asked you, Denise, I liked how you answered that the day before or the day after. It can't be there longer than the day before or the day after. I just think, we all have different schedules, and I don't like to create code that we're not going to enforce. And at 6 p.m., I don't think anybody's going to enforce that, even if it is an issue. The neighbor's going to complain, and Brock's going to get called, or someone's going to get called. I just think it would be better to have it the day before and the day after.
And we have consensus?
Anybody in opposition? Go for it.
5, 3. Okay.
And I'm okay in the 553A of removing the, has to be on the curbside by 7 o'clock, because the garbage trucks are in my neighborhood long before 7 o'clock. They're dumping garbage cans at 6:30, I think, but if not, they're really close. So even that time frame, I'm not sure. If they don't get it out by 7, they don't get it out, they don't get it picked up.
I think the only reason for that one is so that with the solid waste contract, we can tell them this was a legitimate miss. You guys missed this. This was out there on time, and if somebody doesn't put it out till 9, then it's on
This
them.
language helps us operationally.
Okay.
So,
And frankly, I think our contract says their pickups start at 7. Shouldn't be earlier than 7.
Shouldn't be earlier than 7.
That's the way it seems like it's earlier, but.
And when I go to 555, mine aren't page numbers, so I don't know. 555, we're talking about the representative for this waste company. Anyway, for Transjordan, just for the council, do we want something in the code that says they have to give us a report at some interval? I know that I heard that the mayor wants them to, but do we want to codify anything so that they have to come before us and give us a report? It's just a question.
thoughts on that?
My thought is that we need a report. I think that based on something that happened with the recycling, I think that's how we got, I think honestly, that's how we got blindsided on the recycling.
So do we want to include something in there that that person, the city rep, will come once a year, twice a year, once a quarter?
I don't personally see a need to have it codified. Prior administration actually reduced some of these to having information disseminated through email rather than having to take up time in the meeting. So if a different council wants to do something different, I think we can make the request, but I don't know that we need to codify it.
Could we put something in there that says updates will be provided on
As requested by the council.
or on a regular basis, and it can be by email, it can be by, I think I'd like to see something that says that the council's responsible for getting an update on Transjordan. I think I agree with Kayleen.
You
I
could-
think we got blindsided by this recycling thing, and I think we could have got ahead of it if we would have known.
So we could say they're required to provide updates, but without necessarily saying you have to come to council meeting to do that in person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and how often do we want them? Quarterly?
I mean, if they want to send an email, I mean, that's
Yeah.
quarterly.
Oh, I wouldn't do it, I wouldn't do it
How about
more
once every
often
2
than
years?
quarterly. I would do it quarterly or less often. I don't know that there's much to report monthly.
How about,
It doesn't-
how about once in 2
It
years?
doesn't change that much, yeah.
I think quarterly, I think Melissa hit it, I think quarterly's good.
Okay.
And if they want to send an email, it's not that big of a deal.
It's better than 0.
I would just put in the code though, as directed by the council by resolution, that way you could change it without having to re-codify everything. Or we could pass a resolution that just says, we want it quarterly, or we want it more often, or we want it less often.
Yeah.
Whatever you'd like, council.
I just think somewhere it needs to say that they need to report to us, because otherwise,
What's that?
Because they haven't been reported to us.
otherwise we read about it on Facebook, and I hate doing that.
That never occurs.
My next
Okay,
one.
so do we want to go down the resolution, like, and annually when you review the people on the committees and representatives to boards, that you also outline how often those committees or boards report to the council annually, or do you want to have it in the code?
That's a good
I
idea.
think we're saying resolution, right?
Yeah.
Resolution is how we're going to handle it, Denise.
Right.
And do you have anything before 9282?
No.
Okay. So my next one is 9282D.
Okay.
And you kind of addressed this, but I'm kind of confused, because if we have residents that haven't signed a contract, and we need a contract to enforce what we're putting into code now, why wouldn't we ask them to now sign something?
We will do a large campaign to do so, but, I mean, to be honest, it's gonna be a difficult, we're gonna be like salmon swimming upriver. But that being said, we will do a strong campaign to try and get those contracts in place. Typically, when we make contact with a customer, if they're coming in to pay a delinquent shut off or those kinds of things, those are the ones we really want to catch and put on the contract. So we won't turn them back on after they've been shut off because of non-payment until they come in and sign a contract or do an electronic version of the contract. So those are the best way for us to do that. That contract is really most important when the resident moves and leaves the city without payment. But with this new, with the new instrument that we're using now, where we're using ACE to not pick up service first, and then we're going to pick up cans if we don't get a response then, that's going to really reduce the amount of delinquencies significantly from where we have been, where we've not done anything. So I think that this contract will probably resolve itself in knowing that for them to get service again, they're going to have to sign a contract. And those that don't have a contract that are regularly paying their bills and not on the discontinuance of service list each month or whenever, having a contract with them isn't quite as important.
Okay. Then my next one is 92A4, no, 92A4A. And I liked
So
your...
hold on. Sorry, I'm sorry. 92A, D.
Oh, that was
D.
your question on
My
D.
question there is going to be, I want to make sure that I'm clear. This paragraph grants permission for the city to enter the property. We want that removed. Is that correct?
I think that's a yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I was understanding that. Okay, so we will remove that. I apologize. The next item?
It was the one that 92A4B, the how often, and you said that, you suggested we change that section to read when meters are read after a period of greater than 39 days.
Yes.
Instead of what you've got, and I like that.
Thank you. We typically, the new schedule that we worked out won't go past 33 days. If all goes well, it would be a reread, and that would always occur within less than 7 days of a bad read. If we were reading on a day 32 for an account and we got a bad read and we send out our meter readers again, the longest it would ever be would be a week later. So I'm really supportive of adding that greater than 39 days.
Thank you. That's all I have.
So the next one would probably be, at least in my order, is the criminal, the sense of whether it should be criminal or not.
Which one is that?
What is that? That would be 928 Charlie. 928C. That isn't that the, yeah. 928C. Do we want to
Maybe
have
charged with a criminal offense.
criminal offense? We have the whole ALJ process and everything else with the administrative type stuff.
Could we just say charged with an offense?
Or
Right, because it's not specific, like what type of criminal offense is that?
Because the next line says, and the city may seek any civil remedies permitted by law.
It does say may, council, it doesn't say shall. Leaving this language open gives us options. We can't anticipate how egregious it might be, or if it may be something that rises to the level.
I'm just
Somebody
unfound.
puts a body in.
I mean, if we're talking about a Class B misdemeanor under city ordinance, which we can do, well, and there's that there's the bill in the legislature that says you can't do a Class B until it's a nuisance, but I'm just not I'm just not a fan of making the front license plate a primary offense. I'm not looking to I know that what we're trying to say is we want some sort of leverage over them, but I just don't like it puts, I mean, who's going to enforce it? If we did decide it was a criminal offense, and that means it's not the code enforcement, because code enforcement normally doesn't do criminal offenses, right? And then, so if it's not code enforcement, now we're tying up the police department to write a ticket over a garbage can.
Well, it is
I think the
theft.
city's got,
It's people putting something in your.
It is theft.
it is theft, but
If we don't have it in there, can they still be charged with theft? I mean, if somebody comes over to my business and fills up my dumpster and behind my store and
Yeah, 'cause
fills it to
you have to pay for
overflowing,
that.
I'm paying for that. And then I don't have a place to put my garbage for 2
well,
weeks.
and I think that you just hit on what's gonna happen. Is that if these people don't have a garbage can and they can't slip it into their neighbor's garbage can,
They can't go to my store.
they're gonna throw it in the dumps, they're gonna throw it in their pickup truck and they're gonna run down to the dumpster behind your store or my store.
Or the church.
Or the church and throw their garbage in it, which is still, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I
I
think,
mean, I think leaving it there because you're talking about the extremes, which you and I wouldn't do, but
yeah,
it happens, so it's good to have it as a protection, I think.
I think if it rises to the level of a criminal offense, I wouldn't want to leave it out.
Yeah, that's, you know, I think
You know what I
you
mean?
need to leave
If
it in
if
there.
it does rise to that level, if the neighbor is constantly filling my garbage can with his garbage every single week because his can won't get picked up, or he doesn't have a can anymore,
That's
he
true.
already got picked up.
What if we just say maybe charged with an offense? And omit the word criminal? It still gives flexibility, it still says may.
Well, you got criminal and civil. in
So
there,
maybe the better wording is strike the whole thing, maybe charged with a criminal offense. And it says, the city may seek any civil or criminal remedy permitted by law.
Okay.
Criminal remedies aren't usually called criminal remedies, are they?
Well, but, or
They're not.
may seek any remedy, civil or criminal, it is a remedy. I mean, I'd rather see it included in the other sentence than have that parenthetical criminal offense, but that's just me, but it's not that big of a deal, I'm just
Put it in your
going
neighbor's garbage.
I can just see that we get,
We can change that if you'd like, just civil and criminal remedies, if that works for.
I think that may clean it up, it'll shorten the wording, so, other than that, I'm ready to move on.
Okay, so let me read back what I hear. Any person who makes such a connection may be charged with an offense, and the city may seek any civil or criminal remedies permitted by law.
Fine with me if the lawyers like it.
Okay.
Leaves it open-ended and still has some teeth in it.
Beautiful. Any other
That works.
questions or comments for this particular item?
Council, with these changes, are you ready for us to bring this back for adoption?
Business item? Actually, this needs a public hearing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
time-wise, that took longer than anticipated, but next up is budget. Also Denise.
I'll go quick. So council, thank you for your feedback when you had your council retreat. It was helpful to hear from a lot of you that you were frustrated in some ways with the budget process. We're attempting to try and work through those with you, so hopefully this addresses some movement towards improvement of that process, and we'll get better every year. So let's go over this real quick. So slide number 2, we're going to talk about budget process improvements, and let's go to slide number 3. So budget process improvements, what we're proposing to you, and we certainly are welcome to your feedback, but I think that part of maybe the frustration with the budget process is that you're trying to eat an elephant in a really short amount of time. So what I'm hopeful for is that maybe we can give you little bites at a time as we're preparing the budget to present to you in April, that you'll get a little bit each time you meet in a work session. And those work sessions will be between 15 minutes and an hour. The ones that will be an hour will be as we're getting more towards a real budget coming to you and things are coming into alignment. So the first one would be this one, the February 12th. We're going to talk about the budget calendar and the process that we're going to use. And then the next meeting, we'll talk about budget principles, the best things that we use, principles that we use as we prepare the budget, and we can educate you on so that you know why we do certain things. And then March 11th, we'll go over performance measures and goals for each of the departments and the city as a whole, making sure that we're really on the road to what you're looking for long-term as well. March 25th, we will have revenue projections ready for you. So that's your first taste of, okay, here's what we believe we're going to have to work with as far as revenue coming in. And we'll go over revenues then. April 15th, we'll go over compensation and benefits, because after that period, we'll have a benefit broker on board. We've gone through the RFP process, and we have final interviews next week for those. So we'll have renewals. We already know renewals for this next year for the most part, but we do have a little more work to do with the broker. But we'll have those numbers by April 15th, as well as any changes in compensation, cost of living allowance, all those things, all that information will be discussed in that work session. The 29th, we'll go over operations and the consolidated. We can have a draft of that well in advance so you can review it, give us feedback, so we're not just giving it to you and then you coming back to us with a bunch of changes. May 13th, we'll go over those one-time requests, anything that isn't going to be ongoing, and CIP, the CIP and 5-year plan. And then on May 20th, we'll go over the other funds. So we're really going to concentrate on the general funds because that's the substantial portion of our budget, and then work on the other funds as they get completed and educate you on the status of those funds. So what do you think of that kind of strategy?
Significant improvement. And it might be jumping the gun a little bit, but in the mayor's budget retreat, you mentioned modifying the process a little bit more for next year and starting earlier. Did you want to mention that as well?
I would be about that, yeah. And there were a couple of challenges that we had. The first is the change of the form of government certainly has we kind of slowed down as we approached January. What we're really looking for is to do a council retreat and strategy session with the council, a visioning session kind of thing for more in like November of each year. And then in December, we start putting those visions into place and knowing what we're really working towards and starting to prepare the budget as we hit the ground first thing in January. This year, obviously, that wasn't going to be possible until we changed everything out. And then I'm going to be candid. I mean, my daughter having a baby last week probably threw a little bit of a wrench in our timeline as well. So as I'm here out of state, it's kind of put us behind a little bit. So we will be looking for moving all of this up about 60 days from where it is right now. Thank you.
Denise, what day is the mayor presenting the budget to the council? Which meeting?
That's required by law by May 22nd.
Thank you.
But we will be doing that well before that point. I'm sorry, not May 22nd. I apologize.
Sorry.
The first meeting in May. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the first meeting in May, so it will be May 13th.
Okay.
We are trying. I'm hopeful that we can get it to you before that, but I can't promise that yet. I'm trying to revise all of the budget documents for everyone to work through. So we're working on it. We're hopeful to bring it to you in April, but I don't want to guarantee that yet.
And my last question was, I know budgets are never simple, but as I've been on the council and I've watched the budgets over the past probably 6 years, they don't change substantially from year to year. It still hovers around the same number. So what I'd like to see this year, if possible, is if the budget's $2 million higher this year or it's $2 million lower, can you show us as a council where you're taking the money out? Because here's an example. So last year, let's say the budget was $65 million, and this year you're presenting $67 million. I want to see where the extra $2 million is going and why, not just, oh, it's up $2 million.
Absolutely, and that's going to be that whole, as we go over these work sessions in compensation and benefits, that will be the first piece. So in our mayor's retreat that we had last week, we went over, all right, well, here's where all compensation for departments have been before, and here's the changes that have occurred, and here's what we're anticipating. So I hope that we'll be able to really clearly define to you exactly where each dollar is going and how it's been spent in the past, and then how those changes are going to be implemented. This year's going to be a lot of change as the organization has changed. It was last year as well. So, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
And then one more thing new to the city and to our council is the council has their own budget. So are we going to have a council discussion about how our budget works and employees for the council, et cetera?
I think that's great.
Because we don't want you guys setting our budget, right?
No, actually, Alan has the first of the documents to begin the council's work, council budget. So he's got the personnel requests right now that will be going to human resources, and then operational requests will be coming soon as well.
Great.
So Alan will take the lead on preparing the council's budget, but it may be a good idea for you all to have a work session maybe just on the council budget alone.
Thank you.
That can get really
Yeah, it's
priority.
something new to all of us and the city, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So would you like me to put that into our calendar process, or would that be something that you want the council to manage on its own?
We'll take care of our budget and
Great.
not take away time from the rest of the city budget for that.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. Another process improvement that we're going to be putting in place is the budget committee. Now, I know that some of you are familiar that there's been budget committees that have been in the past, but this is the one that we're going to propose for this year. So the members of the budget committee will be the mayor, the chief administrative officer, myself, the administrative services director, the budget officer, and then 2 department heads, which have volunteered for this committee. It's a commitment of about 2 hours a week is what we're thinking, and this committee will meet with each department and have that department present their budget and requests to the budget committee. And then the budget committee will consider those requests and eventually recommend a balanced budget to the mayor. So those decisions aren't being made in a vacuum, and that all the department heads are on the same page together. This builds collaboration, and it builds different insights into where the city's money is really being focused, quite candidly. Are there any comments or questions about the budget committee?
I just have a random question. It's not really that random, but it is a question. What are the, I'm trying to decide how to phrase this, pros and cons about having either a council member or 2 or a council staff member on that committee, just so the council doesn't get everything all at once you're all done, but has a little more of a heads up along the way? Not to provide input necessarily, just to be able to provide updates to the council as things progress. It's something I've asked for years and years and years and years, and so I'm asking again.
Sure.
We have somebody
You
that
know
wants
what,
to do 2
I
hours.
believe that we're open for that. However, that's what we were kind of hoping those council work sessions would accomplish, that as this budget is progressing, that we would be giving you updates more on a regular basis instead of just giving you everything at once. The budget committee, our concern about having a council member on the budget committee is about having information filtered through one person instead of through a committee as a whole. And that one person on the council would have more input into the budget process than maybe the others. We're hopeful that we can provide all the information at the same time.
Yeah, and no, again, it's not for input purposes, it's for output purposes, if I can phrase it that way. If we had like Alan on that committee, for example, just to sit in and listen in and to take notes and to provide back, here's some things you might want to be aware of that are coming down the pike, here's some, you know, there's a request over here, there's a request over there, some things that you might want to just keep your eyes on, that kind of thing, just to increase the flow of communication.
We'll work on communicating as much as possible, but this budget committee is an administrative budget committee for the preparation of the mayor's proposed budget. So it is.
Again, I'm not asking for council to provide input. I'm just asking for more updates more often.
We will work on that very much so.
But that would be an easy way to do it. I mean, if there's no reason why it has to be a secret.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
and there's nothing we're doing that's in secret. I am very concerned about asymmetrical information coming to the council. I want to make sure all of you get even information, all of you get all of the information, and that we get regular communication, regular information to the council as a whole, as often as you like it.
So I will be providing updates to the council on a regular basis through those work sessions, as well as likely some updates in other areas as well.
Okay, I'll bite my tongue for the rest
Any
of this
other-
year. Bring it up next year.
Okay, so let's go through the budget calendar real quick. If we go to slide number 6, we're looking at January, February. So in January and February, budget expectations and goals are set, and departments are preparing their budgets for the budget committee. So on the 31st, the mayor held his budget retreat, and I think that it was pretty fruitful. We got a good understanding of where the city preliminarily sits right now and where departments are. February 7th, personnel requests are due back to HR. We actually extended that through Monday of this week. And then February 12th, right now, we're having the first of 8 work sessions with the council on the budget. The 21st, we'll go over the personnel requests. They'll be returned to the department so they can include them in their presentation to the budget committee. And then on February 26th, we'll have that second work session with the council. Go to the next slide in March. Departments will be preparing their budgets for the budget committee, and compensation and benefits reviews will occur during this time. So human resources and administrative services will be working very closely together as we look at compensation, market adjustments, reclassification of employees, especially during all of the restructuring that's gone on over the last couple of weeks. And then we'll have our next 2 work sessions with the council that will bring them up to speed on the progress that we've made at this point. And if you'll note, everything in blue is really more noted towards the council engagement, and everything in black is really what the departments and the mayor will be doing at that point. So in April and May, the budget committee review and prioritization will occur, and the mayor's budget will be prepared. That's where I'm really hopeful I can get some traction to get this to you as early as possible. We'll have 2 more work sessions in April, the 5th and 6th of 8. And then in May, the council is going to accept the mayor's budget. And that doesn't mean that you adopt it. It only means that we're handing it to you and you will accept it. There doesn't even need to be a formal resolution for that. Once you accept the mayor's budget, then that's your time. So now you're going to review your council goals and you're going to reconcile the budget to your understanding. So you'll work closely with myself and the budget officer, and we can make any changes that you decide that you want to make to that budget, or make clarifications or whatever that might be. And then on May 13th and 20th, we'll do the last of the work sessions. And then in June, we'll start more work together. So we're going to go to slide number 9, the last one. This will go over what happens in June. So certified tax rates are released by Salt Lake County around June 7th. They keep trying to get earlier, which would be really helpful, but it just haven't seemed to get there. June 10th is when we'll have a public hearing on the budget. So the budget will be available to the public as the mayor's tentative budget. And then you can hear from the public on that budget as well. So on June 10th, you'll hear from the public, and then on June 24th, you'll adopt the budget as you have reconciled it, and you will certify the tax levy. If you choose a tax levy that's different from the certified rate, and that means it can go up or it can go down. You can say, I don't want as much property tax, which I don't think will happen. But anything different from the certified rate, then the public process occurs in July and August. So that's just more informational knowledge, not that we're anticipating any changes there. So that's the budget calendar and process that we've gone through so far, and I would like to hear some discussion from you on what you think.
On the slide that shows April and May, those dates need to be corrected because city council calendars changed to accommodate the ULCT meetings. So the meetings are on the 8th and the 15th of April. Those are the right dates, right? The 8th and the 15th. And then the 29th is the fifth Wednesday, and I believe that's when we have the combined City Council Planning Commission meeting scheduled.
Okay, so the council meetings will be April 8th and April 15th?
Yes.
No, the 15th changed to the 8th.
The 8th and the 15th.
I'll have to double check my
But-
notes.
But if
Don't
we're
remember.
still,
Yes,
if we're
that's-
still coming the 15th and the 29th, couldn't that still work?
The 29th is combined with the Planning Commission.
But we don't start that at 5:30, right? Couldn't we still do this at 5:30 and then meet with them at 6?
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah.
We could have an extra one.
I know, I was like, maybe we could go over the council budget on that extra week.
I was being facetious.
I would suggest we add the workshop, well, it should show the 8th. I know Alan's got that on his tentative schedule for the 8th, so rather than remove it from the 8th and try and pass it to the 29th, we have some extra time if needed on the 29th.
So add the 8th as a council work session to go over the council's budget?
Yeah. Just since we're
Okay.
having it at the start of each council meeting, so it'd be weird to skip that one.
Well, that'd give us 9 work sessions.
Yep.
Well, I think also when you have it as a work session at 5:30 in an open meeting like this, it really gives the public the opportunity too to sit through and listen to what's going on. So I think that there's more engagement that way as well.
Anything else for this one?
Do I need to move to suspend the rules so Denise can hang up? Because the electronic, because doesn't the electronic say you have? If you
Yeah, so
join-
if that's a motion, I second.
So I'm gonna move to allow you to hang up, Denise. Suspend the rules so you can
So
go
I'll-
have fun on the
Alright,
beaches.
I'll
of Oahu.
second. So we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Bye, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Take care.
While we're talking about meeting schedules, just really quick, Tony, on our website, the city council page has a link to city council meeting schedule, and it's to last year's. We just might want to update that. Not
So-
giving direction, just a suggestion.
So next item is presentation of potential concepts for Maple Hills Park. With, is that Nikolai Halverson?
Evening, Council. I'm Dave Murphy, manager of the Capital Projects Group, and I have Nikolai Halverson with me, and also Andrew Newlander and Matt Windward from G. Brown Design. Nikolai has been working hard and is project manager on this project, and we're here to give you an update of what's going on with the design of Maple Hills.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Council Chair, the Mayor, who's around here for hearing us out. Like Dave said, we've invited G. Brown here to come speak with you about the project tools to answer any questions that you may have before we start the final design and construction process. Without further ado, Andrew and Matthew Windward, go ahead and turn the time over to you.
I'm going to come up to the front so I can point to the screen. I do have just a couple hard copies of the presentation that you guys want to pass down and share if you need to. Do we need to switch the screen over to?
It is, it's just the keyboard and mouse here.
Okay.
Should have set that up.
Planning Commission meeting. This looks
There we
like
go, I
Michael
just need to
Oliver's
go.
default slides.
Need to go to this one. I can come to this. Okay.
This is same as the electronic. That's helpful too.
Well, I'm excited to just talk a little bit about the concept and master plan we've come up with for the park. Again, I'm Andrew Norlander with G. Brown Design. We're the design consultants for the project. We'll walk you through a little bit of the process we went through to come up with our master plan that we have to date. We did a public open house. I'll touch on that. I'll walk you through the master plan, and then we'll talk a little bit about the budget and what can be developed for phase 1 of it. So at a public open house in December, we presented 2 distinct concepts for this 10-acre park. They were similar in amenities, but different layout, different design for each. We met with the public, presented the options, and got their input from them. And based on their input, we kind of took the top input, which was, and I'll get into these ideas as I go over the concept next. So a bike adventure path, a scooter loop, play area, play zones versus just a playground, a sledding hill, circular swing, lots of seating, and there's quite a few other comments we received as well, and those are included in the back of that packet. But those were the top input that we received at the public open house. So from that public open house, we took the comments received and developed a refined master plan. And what it is really, we took kind of this half of concept 1 and combined it with this half of concept 2. So I'll walk you through a little bit of the major design elements of this park. So it's 10 acres. It's a relatively steep site. There's about 48 feet of elevation change from the top corner here to the bottom corner there. So we've got a lot of good grade that we can work with and play with and use in the park. To start off, we're bringing parking in right off of 7400 South. It's adjacent to a pavilion and then the restroom we've graded a little bit more of a flat lawn area right at the front, and then the meandering paths lead us up to the play zones. So rather than just a simple playground, which might be an amoeba shape with a couple of structures in it and a swing set, we've done something a little bit more unique and creative where we've done play zones. So we have a spinning zone with equipment like these, and these are just examples. We haven't defined what the actual equipment will be yet. So a spin zone, a climbing zone where there might be a net climbing structure, and then grass climbing mounds. And then again, to play off of the topography we have on the site, we've put in an embankment slide hill that could have multiple slides on it, all at grade. And then circular swing, which you can see a picture of here in the middle, so kids can actually swing and face each other. Not close enough that they're going to hit each other, but have that interaction where they're looking at each other. A triple basketball court, so you can play one-on-one. And then off of that, again, taking advantage of the topography of the site, a sledding hill down to a larger flat area in the middle. Not quite big enough to put a soccer field in, per se, but it's about 100 by 200. That's really about 1 to 2%. The rest of it's, I think, we're steep through here for the sled hill. We flatten out, and then we drop back down to meet up with the topography at the bottom. So this was really kind of the concept 1. This half was concept 2, where we married the 2 together from that public open house. And this site includes a scooter loop and a bike adventure path. So the scooter loop might have some elements like this where kids can, I'm thinking young kids can just ride scooters around, go over some elements like this, a little bit of a raised embankment there, and then a bike adventure path through here to take advantage of the grade that goes down with banked corners, mounds they can ride bikes over, so similar to a pump track. So again, it's not something you see in every park. It's a little bit more unique, but it adds a great amenity to this community here in the west part of West Jordan. So the next part is budget and phasing. So phase 1, we have a budget of about $410,000, and it doesn't ever go quite as far as we'd want or hope. But what it does get us is access from the neighborhood through up into the park, and then a portion of the playground with the spin zone, the climbing zone, and the climbing mounds. About an acre of lawn area for playing. And again, this is kind of a flat area. And then a couple of the walking paths. And then the future phase or phases, depending on how budgets go, we'll build out the other parts of the park. Again, we're excited to be a part of it and grateful for the opportunity to come and present it to you. And ask if you have any questions or comments or input.
So when you develop this first little part, which doesn't include the circular swings and the basketball, what does that sledding hill look like while it's not developed?
Right now, it stays as is, so we'll have to do some grading. Right now, yeah, it's a big empty open field. We'll have to do some grading to build this up to where it can work, so there will be some grade that falls off, but largely the rest of the site stays undeveloped.
Some grade that falls off. So I have a 3-year-old and he's running. What does that grade look like? Is it a nice gentle slope?
Certainly, yeah. It's not going
Okay.
to be a 45-degree angle. We'll kind of blend it back into existing grade.
Okay.
So the sledding hill will be graded as part of phase one?
No, that'd be part of phase two. Some of it, this line may need to adjust some, and the grading of it will depend on how far that goes out. So again, we'll work on that as we get into more detailed design.
I just can see people going to that park and they see something like a sled hill, and we open it up.
Well, it's gonna be sledded on it.
It's gonna get, that's it, it's gonna get sledded. It's gonna
Get
get
enough snow on it.
Get enough snow on it, people are gonna be sledding on it, and so
Northeast
I'm
facing
wondering
slope.
if we shouldn't include the little bit of grading the first round on that, but that's just me.
That's just, as budgets go, we can certainly look at that if there's some trade-offs, things that we can take out from maybe down here and add in to build it up a little bit more.
I do have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed in the size of phase one. I kind of thought it would be much more of this than this. Is that budget, Dave, is that budget, the current impact fee budget that we have?
$500,000 this year, 1.7 million next year is what's slated tentatively. So we'll be getting into that when we go through the budgeting process now as we move forward.
Okay, I'm just, again, I'm just really kind of, as much as I want to see work started on this sooner than later, right? This is a neighborhood in a district that's really kind of important, but I just really kind of thought phase one would be more than 1.2 acres out of 10. I thought we were talking about 20-25% of the project, not 9 to 10% of the project.
Some of the concerns that we'll have when we get into phase two is utility connections and being able to get sewer and water to that bathroom.
Understood.
And developing 7400 South, which is a large expense. Meaning to get utilities there, we're still waiting for outside developers. to help
However, there's a
us.
lot here that doesn't require utilities, it's also not being included in phase one.
Correct.
Swings, for example. I've had some accidents on swings where you want a sewer line, but we don't think it's necessary.
I understand.
That's
So
just,
we can discuss that when we get through the budget process.
well, this is the phase one discussion, so.
Yeah.
Are parking stalls part of phase one?
It's just the neighborhood access. Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that. It's the elements inside the red dashed line.
And I'm fine waiting a year or 2 or 3 for restrooms. We have lots of parks that don't have any restrooms, right? So restrooms is one thing, but parking stalls and some sort of parking where the only access is not through the neighborhood, and just a little more grass, a little more green. I'm just really disappointed in the scope of this. I thought we were looking at least twice this much in phase one when we first talked about phasing like a year and a half ago. I'm just really disappointed.
So are there any specific requests or questions from staff of the council, or is direct? What exactly does staff need from the council at this point?
This is a chance for us to get your input on, other input on it as well. We don't need formal direction or formal approval or resolution. This is just, want to bring you the plan, show it to the council, and get your feedback.
Is there any way to put in some parking, some even temporary asphalt, something coming off of 7400 South as it is? Without having to develop 7400 South? I know that's a huge deal.
And I do think that's the big part of it, is just cost. We did a preliminary cost estimate for phase one, but we also did it for the entire master plan. And just as a, let me look at our parking area. So just for the parking, the asphalt alone is about $35,000. That doesn't take into account curb, gutter, storm drainage. So there's significant cost in that parking lot.
Yes, when we had the public open house, I was there for most of the night, if not the whole night. And it was being told phase one was from the west property line to the sidewalk into the neighborhood. And now we're looking at a fourth of that, let alone, and that's what was, there were neighbors, there were people there, and that's what they heard. And then you're gonna come back and tell them, no, sorry, phase one is really just a little tiny piece of that phase one. Not just a little tiny piece of the 10 acres, this is a little tiny piece of the 4 acres, or the 3 acres that they kind of counted on, so.
So in the public open house, the thing that we did do, and we did appreciate your input there, we did not specifically outline a boundary. We identified what we thought were potential amenities that were included. This is the first time that we have outlined what we thought the phase was based off of estimates.
I was told by at least 2 people, I don't remember who was there, but at least 2 people said it's from that property line to where that sidewalk is coming through the neighborhood. Approximately.
I don't know who those individuals are. We can try to push and pull the budgets around, but the budget is the constraining factor.
Yeah.
The first phase always ends up with limited improvement just because of earthwork, front end costs that you won't have maybe in the same, some of the utility connections, we will have to have irrigation, water connections, power for that irrigation controller.
Just wanted to express my thoughts. There's a principle in business and in customer service. It's called under-promise and over-deliver. And I feel like I'm constantly being over-promised and under-delivered. Constantly. And I, as of now, the representative of the city to my residents, am the one over-promising and under-delivering. And it grates on me. It really, just really grates on me. And so, especially this project that I've been championing for a while now, it's just really irritates. And I apologize for being irritable, but I'm irritated, so.
Can I speak real quick?
Absolutely.
Councilman, maybe this is just an idea we could float out there, is bridge this budget that we currently have, $410,000, with the 1.7 million, and do a lot more work.
What do you mean?
For the 1.7 million that's slated for next year, bridge it with the current money and wait till.
You can wait to get started and do a lot more in phase one, but you delay the start.
You delay the start time, but we have more money to work with.
Yeah, and that's
I know.
just a different promise that we're under and overing on.
Yeah.
So,
That is something to look at and evaluate, because there are efficiencies in looking at completing the construction or most of the construction all at once rather than mobilizing, building.
right, but I mean, are we talking about deferring it for 1 year, deferring it for 3 to 5 years as we gotta wait for money to develop the streets? I mean,
Budget should be available in July, right?
It's budgetary, yeah, July is.
So you can either start phase one now, or you can wait and do it all together a year from now.
And they mobilize one time instead of mobilizing
but
maybe
the
2 or 3.
whole point of the phases was to get something done sooner than later. That was the whole point of starting this phased idea. Because otherwise it's gonna be 10 years before this park's done, and at that point, it's not gonna cost 1.7 million, it's gonna cost 5 million. Just because that's what construction costs are going.
Sure.
So with the phasing, were you talking about the money needed from the next budget year? I mean, with the next budget year starting July, that should be available just, 5 months down the road?
Yeah.
So we could lump both of those together, and phase one then becomes much larger and tackles a lot more.
So to put you on the spot, what would $2 million do?
It gets most of
This.
it. So
Most of, what do you mean by most of it?
Our initial estimate for the entire thing would be about 2.4, 2.5 million from here to here, the entire 10 acres, right? So
But that doesn't include
there might
this-
be
that doesn't include
elements.
sewer and
Does that
stuff, right?
assume, 74th is already built, and does that
Yes,
assume?
that's not, that's assuming someone else
utility
takes
lines are
care of
already
utilities.
done,
Right,
We-
so,
We could stub pipe through the park just in preparation for when the sewer and the utility gets there though.
Like reverse stuff.
I'm just saying, I don't need restrooms in phase one. I don't necessarily even need a pavilion, but more than 1.2.
Well, this is all budgetary though. I mean, that's
I know.
what we can get this for. So either do the first phase or wait.
Or you do a greater area of landscaped area and it pulls back the amount of amenities relative to the play equipment and the size of
We got
play
spin
area,
zone
right?
and a net climbing thing. What else is in this phase one? That's it.
Well, play equipment, cost of play equipment and as well as surfacing, and that's where you end up with
it's a
some
significant
expenses
So,
expense.
Brian, what will it look like for the resident living nearby though? Because we're saying phase one, and then in July, we're gonna have money for phase two. Well, we're not gonna start this until the mud's gone, right? So,
Correct, I mean,
so what, if I'm living next door, will I even know there was a difference between this section and the July budget?
Well, a lot of this phasing can't, a lot of phase two can't be done until the utilities are in and the streets are done, and we don't have the money for those.
no, we can still build the park, correct, Dave? We can still build the park. We would just stub pipe into the park for when the utilities get there. Right?
Possibly the one thing that you can't finish yet without the utilities being done is the bathroom. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing that
Until you have the
wait.
sewer connection,
Yeah, the
correct?
larger expense than utilities though, I think is the roads. How much
Correct.
are you willing to develop without 74th and 64th being done?
We'll have to go through that in design and give you an answer.
I mean, I'd like to see 74th, maybe not finished, but at least an access into the parking lot, you know, with that 30 feet or 60 feet or whatever that is, between the parking lot driveway
Yeah, just
and,
up
yeah,
there.
that little bit there. You don't need to, and I'm not talking, you don't need to finish the street. I'm just talking about make it driveway. Put in temporary asphalt until they have the money to do the street.
Temporary asphalt.
I know, that's what I'm saying, there's temporary asphalt there, so why can't we build a temporary parking lot next to it, that temporary asphalt, instead of having that be dirt and concrete pilings and all the crap that's in that lot now?
And we can.
That way we have
We
a
can
good
use
plan.
millings, there's options there. I just think if we bridge the money together, and to your point, Councilmember Whitelock, you're not gonna see that big of a difference.
I'll stop, because we're running out of time, but just food for thought.
Any other comments on this one?
All right. We have one other item as a work session item, and we'll postpone that time in council meeting until after the rest of the meeting. So we'll adjourn from here and reconvene in the council chambers.
Hey, Zach, I agree with you.
Whatever that.
Well, I was at the house, and they said, oh, no, phase one will be this much.
Chad, you haven't said anything on that. Yeah, but. I'd rather.
We just looked last
And break the hill and get more grass in it, and then come back and have a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, so they're talking about, we can't do this unless we're willing to do 74th and 64th West and develop that whole street. That's huge.
yeah, but the neighborhood wants a park. Correct? And
And the discussions I had with Dave and Brian way back in the day was, let's build this access. This is already in place. It's already grass. It's already got a sidewalk in it. It's already got trees in it.
and we need to go this much grass.
Yeah, well, I said, let's build this, build a sidewalk across here, build this much of the park with a driveway in right here. In fact, start in this corner is what I thought.
See, this doesn't even look like it's gonna be irrigated, so why not just build the grass? Build as much grass as you can and
Yeah,
call
this
it
is
good.
gonna have slope because of the grade of the